up. We're here on the mud to nestle you in so it works. I think that's the best that we're going to be able to do at this point. Now we're just going to wait for a few people to come in. I'm going to bring up the chat on my computer. And we can start. I've got some questions written down. I'm getting rid of all volume on my computer because there's nothing worse than playback. So, just gonna share some of this around on Facebook. Say hi if you're joining us in the chat. Live, go, and a now. It's been a long time since I've done one of these, actually. I mean, now because I'm live on my phone, my whole internet. So let's, try to figure this out. Oh, to live in the rural parts of Australia. It's not even properly rural. I mean, I'm only an hour out of Melbourne and, here we are. Okay. Hello, Belchamela. I think that's how you pronounce it. Hi, Claire. As people are coming in, hello. I'm just sharing some things around on Facebook. And then we shall get started. Let me okay, couple of you. If you have any questions as we go, please put your questions in caps lock so I can see them differentiated from the actual chit chat. Claire, your computer went funny earlier this morning. Thank you for joining me earlier this morning as well. Those of you who were around, I was showing and telling some tarot decks. Hi, Dee. Sorry, everyone in the chat. I'm just sharing some things around on the Facebooks. Just getting some people on. I've got a good list of questions that I have here that people have forwarded through this afternoon. So we'll get stuck into those. And as I said, if you've got any questions as they come to you in your mind, you're most welcome to let me know in the chat. So let's start now that is all said and done. Question number one was, now I'm going to yawn. What was your latest witchy purchase? Now, my latest witchy purchase is actually, I made two purchases this week. And they're not here yet. They're coming. They're on their way. I have purchased a spell oil from a Juniper Moon Apothecary, which is an Australian-based witchy supplier. Juniper is around on Facebook. She's around on Instagram. She pops in here on YouTube every now and again as well. So she's definitely around in the community, and lots of people know her, particularly in the Australian community. So it was a it was the first thing that I actually have purchased from her store before, so I'm very much looking forward to using the product in my craft. Purchased a spell oil from her, and I most probably will do a bit of a review as well. The second purchase that I've made this week, witchy wise, is two new tarot decks which I have on the way, which I pre-ordered. The Light Visions Tarot and the Prisma Visions Tarot, which I'm very, very excited about adding to my collection. If you were joining me in my live earlier this morning, you would have heard me talking about them, but it's one of those decks where I have seen it once and then it's kind of haunted me, and I've seen it everywhere else since. So very much excited for those decks to arrive this... Oh no, the decks won't arrive this week. The decks will arrive later in the month, if not in September, because they were pre-ordered. So but you'll definitely know when I get them. Very much excited though to receive Juniper's oil this week, hopefully as well. We've just got a question here from Claire in the chat. When it comes to the practice of witching, there is no connection around me. I feel like anything to do with this area, I feel like I'm going blind. Claire, is that to do with like energetic connection or physical connection with other witches in your community or your area? Let me know, because that's a really cool kind of topic. So we'll have a chat about that. Another question was, have you ever practiced in a coven? I haven't practiced in a coven per se. I have practiced before in a group setting with a couple of other people. And when I say a couple of other, I think the biggest group that I've ever kind of worked possibly for. It was a while ago, and when I was I wouldn't say very new to the practice. It was a few years ago now that I had practiced in that kind of group setting. I enjoyed it. I liked it. Is like physical connection with people though, I do. And I do find group work very interesting, very intriguing, and very powerful. The concept of raising energy together for me is very intriguing, and is something that I do like the experience of. So I wouldn't be opposed to working in a coven type environment or in a group type environment. I'm just not sure how I would go with coven. I would be much better suited, I'd probably be much better suited to more of a casual style of environment. So touching back onto Claire's comments, so Claire's earlier question was, when it comes to the practice of witching, there is no connection around me. I feel like anything to do with this area, I feel like I'm going blind. And we're talking about actual connection between people. It can be like like-minded people around in your local area. I mean, usually you might have to, really just depends on your actual location. I mean, in my town, there was like a new age witchy shop, keyword there was. It's since closed down and has been closed now for maybe 2 years. And that was really, the only kind of sense of community that I'd known in my actual own town. I do know that there are groups and covens and things. I think, Claire, all about kind of putting yourself out there, dipping your toes in, going to those, new age witchy stores or bookshops or things like that. And really trying to find where these people hang out. I think if they're not prevalent on the surface or on face value, which usually isn't the case when it comes to witchcraft, is usually where underneath the layer. You might have to do some digging and finding out of where they all hang out. Hi, Ancient Visions. Welcome to the chat. So good to see you here. If you've got any questions for me, definitely leave them in the comments here. I've got the screen open here, but I'm recording over here. So do leave some questions for me if you have any. Moving on. Do you work with a particular element over the others? That's a good question. Sorry, I've got the yawns now. That is a good question, and I would probably say that I work more so with fire than I do the other elements, and things like that. But I've always very much been into using candles, burning petitions, using fire. As like a conductor of energy as well. Don't get me wrong, I love working with the other types of elements. I love, I've been partial to, use bodies of water in my magic streams, lakes, the ocean, in terms of workings, petitionings, and things like that, energy wise. I love the earth. I love burying things in the earth. I've been quite partial to burying things in the earth. Air, I do love my incenses. I've again been partial to hanging things in trees, to allow wind to blow through them. So I do love working with the elements in spellcraft, but in terms of working with one more than the other. In here, so Claire's got another question. What's your favourite thing about witching? I would say my favourite things about witching is, for me personally, is the sense of control. While in reality, I believe nothing is truly ever in our control, but magic and witchcraft for me is about having a certain degree of control and being able to control and manipulate the energies that are around me for specific reasons. And because I am a control freak. And that is probably why I like that aspect. The other aspect that I like is really, I love witchcraft and I love my spiritual practice because it allows me to have a certain degree of wisdom, a certain degree of knowledge, that and connection to the past, to ancestors, to familial ancestors as well as ancestors, capital A. I like that connection with the past as well. What witchy supplies do you go through the quickest? Oh, I would probably say tea light candles. I use a lot of tea light candles. I love using tea light candles because obviously they're little and they're quick and they're good for good quick magic, which is what I like. Otherwise, I would probably say Florida water. I love my sprays actually. I love my sprays and my colognes and my mists. Um, Probably the latest thing that I've gone through very quickly was Earthly Alchemy's Autumn Witch's Mist, which smells like heaven. And I want that smell. But I go through a lot of tea light candles. I go through a lot of Florida water. I go through a lot of Earthly Alchemy's mists in general, and probably frankincense. I go through a lot of frankincense. Um, yeah. Now, this question actually comes from Pandora Lacora, who is here on YouTube. She asked what advice I had for living a balanced witchy life and making time for both your practice as well as tending to maintain the you know the mundane. My answer to that Crimson Fire. Excuse me. I've got the yawns, and I learnt this from Crimson Fire was to find the magic in the mundane is definitely my advice in terms of living a balanced witchy life. One thing that I was trying to do in my life was separate my witchy practice with my really I understood, and what I understand now is that they're not, you know, necessarily mutually exclusive, and they can belong together and they can work together, and you don't need to have one or the other, you can have both. You know, very simple things, spritzing yourself with Florida water, or, you know, washing your hands with Florida water, anointing yourself with oils. You can do very simple things, lighting incense, lighting candles. You can do very simple things in your everyday, you know, mundane life to, you know, incorporate your witchy life as well. So, finding the magic in the mundane really is my advice there. Now, I'm not sure what's happening. If anybody's in the chat able just to say what's happening with the actual video, because on my screen, it's buffering. But I'm not actually sure what's happening. So if anyone's in the chat could let me know what's actually going on, that would be fantastic. In the meantime, I am going to move on. Thanks, Grey Cat. Thank you. What was the last spell you cast? Now, I'm finding I'm not casting as many spells as what I used to. My craft as of late in the last probably 3 to 2 years, 2 to 3 years, has taken a very... I need another coffee, guys. It's taken a very folky, very low magic turn. And this was probably once I started to really incorporate the Italian traditions of Stregheria into my craft. Because I realized that, you know, there is a time and a place for, you know, big rituals with, you know, circles and candles on the floor and rings of salt and, you know, censers of incense and, you know, a cauldron and a wand and an athame and, you know, all of the things. There is a time and place for all of the things, but you know, my ancestors and my family, the way that they practiced their craft, they didn't do those things. And I realized that you don't have to do those things. So my craft is much more low key and a photo magic. Um, I do love high magic, and I do love I do love the ceremony of high magic, particularly with my archangels in that way. I think that's fantastic, and I love that, and I do that every so often. Um, but my spell casting is very simple now. It's a prayer or a rhyme, or it's a lighting of a candle, um, or you know, the writing of a petition or a sigil, or something. Um, so I'm finding that I don't cast spells as such as often as what I did. However, the last spell that I did cast, the last working that I had going, was a road opener. Um, Dressed candles, herbs, keys, oils, you know, those types of things. For a road opener spell. So that was my last working. Um, yeah, grey cat. I've got you know, some beautiful house plants that I talk to every day, and that I thank every day for, you know, helping, you know, a lot of the plants that I have are purifying the air. You know, talking to the ancestors, off making offerings to the ancestors, as you've got here. Very simplistic style of magic, and very simplistic style of witchcraft. What is, and this is the last official question that I have, what is your favorite crystal? Now, I can talk very generally. Um, I love quartz in general. I love quartz. I think quartz is fantastic because you can do anything with it. Crystal pieces in particular. If you give me a second, I'm going to show you two of my favorite pieces. Oh, yeah. Actually, I'm going to show you three. So I'm going to go in order of my favorites. My favorite would be my big quartz here, my big mother quartz. This was quite expensive, but worth the investment. When I say expensive, I do mean a few $100s. And that is a lot of money for a rock. And I went to the crystal shop and I was looking around, and it was all well and good until I picked this crystal up, and then it was game over. Handing over the credit card, here you go. As soon as I picked this crystal up and touched it and held it in my hand like this, I can't explain it. It just, our energy just worked immediately. And I actually put it back and left the shop, and it was like there was like a tethering. I can explain it as like an elastic band. So I had to go back and I had to buy it and bring it home, and it is the most beautiful piece of crystal that I have. And I love working with this. Sometimes I will just sit with it. If I'm watching TV or reading a book or something, I'll just sit with it. Sometimes I'll bring it to bed with me. We have a fantastic working relationship, and it's just the most amazing crystal to work with. So this is probably by my number two, which is a amethyst. which I've had for lots and lots of years. And this is my reading crystal. So whenever I am reading tarot for myself or for clients, I'll always have this crystal. For the reason, I'm not sure if you can see, there's a slight curve here, and that curve sits quite perfectly in my hand. So I can hold it in my hand while I'm reading. I talk with my hands a lot, so I can hold it in my hand while I'm reading and still dishing out cards as well. I can hold it in either hand, it fits perfectly in either hand, or the surface that I'm reading. No spellcraft, nothing. This is just purely a reading companion for me. So beautiful, and a really beautiful piece, of amethyst as well. My next would be this palm stone that I have here, which is labradorite, and I'm trying to get the flash. I'm trying to get some kind of flash for you, but the lighting's not great. Oh yeah, that's a bit of a flash for you. It's really quite beautiful, and I could look at this and watch it flash kind of all day. The bottom of it's quite dull, but there's a couple of flashes in it. But I love labradorite for lots of different reasons. And I love it particularly when I'm working with I'll often have this labradorite with me when I'm doing readings too. I love labradorite for meditations. I love labradorite for sleep. Would probably be my 3 favorite crystals, I would say. I'm just gonna have a look at the chat. That's it for actual questions. So if you've got any questions, please do leave them here in the comments here. So Grey Cat Cottage, I'm new to your channel. How would you describe yourself and your approach to someone coming to you and your channel for the first time? Oh, well, Grey Cat, welcome to my channel. Welcome to the House of Tarot. I have been around here on YouTube for lots of years, and I, love anyone who comes and sits here with me. I love, anyone who comes, who's new, who's seeking, who's, new to the craft. I love those to join me who are older practitioners who have been practicing for a long time. I just love anyone who's coming to spend their time here, and I'm so grateful for everyone who comes to spend their time here. Whether you have been around since the Wonder Witness Witchcraft days, which is when I very first started on YouTube, Grey Cat, to now what's evolved into the House of Tarot. I'm so grateful that, so many people have been around for the journey, and to watch me grow as a practitioner, and to, have built some really fantastic relationships and friendships with people through YouTube and through my channel has been pretty fantastic. My approach, I talk about what I want to talk about. If I have something to talk about, I'll come on here. I'm not a regular YouTube poster. I used to be much more regular with my posting when I had the time, but I'm quite time poor. It's due to my job. If I have something to talk about, I have something to say, I'll be here, and I'd love for you to be here with me. Otherwise, you can follow me. You can visit my Etsy store and book a reading with me. I'd love the opportunity to read for any of my watchers, any of my viewers. I think it would be fantastic, and I would absolutely love it. I do email readings, and I do recorded voice recordings as well. So Grey Cat, thank you for coming along, and if you have any other questions, do let me know. Just reading through now. Claire, your family is from Korea, and the magic close, absolutely. So it's sister veneration. Nature, ancestors, fantastic. Beautiful. Beautiful. I do love working with the ancestors. I work with a few different types of ancestors. I work with ancestors, as in capital A ancestors, which is, you know, the ancestors. I view them as almost like a collective energy, a collective being as such. But I am very fortunate and very lucky to have done my family tree. I can date, branches of my family back to the year 1545. Otherwise, I can go back, through to England, through to other different parts of Europe as well. So I'm very fortunate to have specific names and even the stories of some people, of how they lived, as well. So I'm very fortunate to have a few particular individuals who are obviously my ancestors, who I work with on an individual basis, as well as the ancestors too. I'm not sure who's left here in the chat, but if you had any other questions, do let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to head off. I got the yawns apparently, so I'm tired. So, Grey Cat has another question. How do you work with the different levels, streams of ancestral energies? Good, that's a great question. So there's a couple of different ways that I work with the particular ancestors. So when I work with the ancestors, capital T, the capital A ancestors, I like to write down the family names that are involved with my family. If we're talking about, familial, or I don't particularly want to work with an individual, I will use the family names, I will use the family crests, etc., so forth, and have them present on an altar and dedicate an altar to them. Otherwise, a photograph of them, I will have the photograph of them, and usually light a candle and an offering and for them, and call them into space. I usually would do that with the ancestors as well. The ancestors, I usually will light a candle and make an offering to them, usually wine or spirits. Depends of, I do this. You're all actually leaning on my bar cart. I have a little bar cart. And one thing that I've been offering a lot of is these two. I've been offering a lot of Jack Daniel's Tennessee honey, just to kind of sweeten things a little bit, towards me. That's very kind of hoodoo-y in terms of like a honey jar or a honey pot, or a sugar jar kind of spell. I use it in the same way as with the Tennessee honey. The other one that I've been using is another whiskey, which is the Tennessee Fire, which is cinnamon. And I use this particularly with my ancestors. God, that smells delicious as well. I use this particularly as an offering to my ancestors if I need them to kind of get things done quite quickly. So up a little bit if I'm asking, particularly if I've been asking a lot of them lately. I'll use, I need anything done quite quickly. It'll be the Tennessee Files or the cinnamon whiskey to kind of speed that up a little bit as well. Okay, guys. Well, I think that is it from me. Thank you so much for joining. There's a few of you in the chat, but what I can see here, my screen is buffering, so I'm not really sure what's going on with my internet connection or this stream at all. It's probably because I'm a bit rusty and haven't done a live stream like this in a long time. So thank you all for coming along, and thank you for everyone who submitted their questions. It was fairly short notice. I just was inspired in the moment this afternoon and thought that I'd come back on here this evening and do a bit of a Q&A with you guys. So given the short notice, thanks so much for sending in all of your questions, and thank you so much for everyone in the chat here who has contributed and who has joined and asked me some questions. So thank you. Hope to see you all again soon. If you do have, welcome to leave those in the comments below. Otherwise, speak to you all very, very soon. Bye.